Okay, welcome participants to this virtual event on 2 with 8 and how we can stimulate household water treatment and safe storage, HWTS. We have a very nice program lined up for you, and it will take about an hour and a half, of which the first hour is presentations and also interaction through the chat. And after that, there will be 30 minutes for discussion with the panelist and the presenter. And you can share your questions with us through the chat and also the Q&A, and then we will bring them to the attention of the speaker and include them in the final discussion. The program is as follows: that we start with a welcome on behalf of Chef Ernest, who prepared it for us. And then we have 6 different presentations showing different angles of HWTS, from groundwater perspective, the product perspective, also the private sector perspective. And then we end with the 2 with 8 initiative, which we also want to bring to your attention as part of this session. And then we will have a moderated discussion at the end. So for now, we'll start with the welcome from Chef Ernest. And let me start that up for you.
The WHO report on HWTS was very clear. Still, 2 billion people today lack access to safe drinking water. What prevents entrepreneurs and governments to bridge this gap? My name is Chef Ernest. I'm former CEO of Agroflor, now retired, having worked for 20 years in the water sector. It provides me the alibi to look back. The donor money we used was what many NGOs do for promotion, social marketing, supporting entrepreneurs to get market-based, and to subsidize the poorest. A breakthrough was achieved in Ethiopia, where the government actively supported the HWTS and self-supply program. Moreover, we succeeded in convincing the utilities to provide and promote water filters, as they could not guarantee the safety at point of use. And the third success was the acknowledgement of safe water as a contribution to a social value, in this case climate change mitigation. Water filters and water kiosks became accredited for carbon credits, and these credits added a second revenue stream to the entrepreneurs, which makes them more viable, bankable, and scalable. So apparently, donor money can work. And we did this all for less than $4 a person. Today you will hear about the bold idea called 2 with 8. It is actually based on these lessons learned. Donors, even today, act very fragmented, in siloed projects, and without collaborating and creating scale by pooling their funds, which would provide them a higher cost efficiency. Moreover, with the pooling of these donor funds, we could do all the things that I just described. We could promote, we could do the social marketing, we could help governments and utilities, but most important, the various donor funds related to many SDGs like health and gender, job creation, or carbon credits, these funds would create that second revenue stream the entrepreneurs need to become viable and scalable. So I hope that you will be inspired today by this 2 with 8 idea It is a bold idea, but it is possible if we collaborate and work together. I wish you a very inspiring meeting. We proved in the past it can work. I think we should do it. Thank you very much.
Yes, that was a very inspiring introduction by Chef Ernest, who is the former CEO of Aqua for All. The next presentation is by Dr. John Cherry, who will present on groundwater and also how the quality of groundwater strengthens the urge, the need for household water treatment and safe household water treatment systems. John Cherry's research pioneered the field of groundwater pollution, now known as contaminant hydrogeology. Apologies. He co-authored the book Groundwater with R.A. Fries, which came out in 1979 and was awarded the Lee Kuan Yew Water Prize in Singapore in 2016, followed by the Stockholm Water Prize in 2020. He's a fellow of the Royal Society of Canada, a foreign member of the US National Academy of Engineering, and on retirement from the University of Waterloo. In 2006, he became a distinguished emeritus professor. In 2017, he founded and is leader of the Groundwater Project, a global philanthropic project aimed at raising groundwater consciousness and strengthening groundwater expertise worldwide, in addition to making groundwater knowledge accessible for everyone, everywhere. And he's also with us. His presentation is recorded, but he will also be available during the discussion for all your questions.
I'm pleased to have this opportunity to present this talk from a groundwater perspective. Groundwater is everywhere beneath us, below the water table. All of the cracks in the rock and the pore spaces in the sand are completely filled with water. Nearly all dug wells and water holes have pathogens contamination. Springs provide hundreds of millions of rural people with their household water. Even at improved spring sources, E. coli concentrations are commonly high, and that's because the improvements don't prevent contamination from animals and human waste from getting into the shallow surface, subsurface, and running into the well. More than 2 billion people are without safe drinking water. This is water poverty due to contaminated water or not enough water. Most household drinking water sources are contaminated or otherwise insecure. Pathogens contamination in household wells is even common in developed countries. In Canada, Europe, the US, and this is nearly always due to faulty well seals. Here are two household wells shown in Canada. Private household wells in developed countries commonly show pathogens contamination, and therefore household water treatment is needed even there. Contamination is usually due to bacteria or viruses, and these are very small particles and can travel down very small imperfections in the well seals. Most well seals have pathways from surface because they're so difficult to make properly. Components of a water well, if it's properly built, you have a seal formed of swelling clay or a cement clay mixture, not pure cement or not concrete, because cement deteriorates over time. Wells in developing countries, most wells are unsafe based on pathogens testing and extrapolations from what little testing has been done. Why do so many wells have pathogens contamination? Requirements for success are many. You need knowledge and care for success, a good seal composition, the seal in place properly at appropriate depth. There are three components to solving rural water poverty, and filters are essential. Household water treatment is essential because all water sources should be viewed as insecure. Testing is nearly always inadequate. Fortunately, there are a large range of treatment options, including boiling, chlorine, and filters. At the Stockholm Water Week in 2022, the Dutch water envoy, Peter Overink, called for innovation and action now, with game-changing ideas. And based on that call, a small group of people formulated the bold idea, referred to as 2 with 8. And I'll draw your attention to the Groundwater Project. Education is a solution based on free knowledge with translations. Hundreds of books are being published in many languages. And we have a new focus on developing countries. A book on well seals is in progress. Translations are important. We have PDF downloads in 174 countries.
So thank you, John, for this clear presentation. And yeah, also it's good. We'll include the reference to your website also in the chat later on. Next presentation is from Nikki Beach from the World Health Organization. Nikki Beach has a background in toxicology and has worked in the public health sector on water initiatives for over 25 years. She has been seconded to WHO's Water and Sanitation Unit from NSF International to support WHO International Scheme to evaluate household water treatment technologies since 2012, so for 10 years now. Yeah, her presentation is also prepared and recorded, so I will share it. And also, yeah, feel free to already ask your questions in the chat, also to other speakers. And we'll also answer them in the chat and after the presentations.
Thank you for the opportunity to share about the WHO International Scheme to evaluate household water treatment technologies. WHO's basis for interest in household water treatment is that until we reach the ultimate goal, which is for all to have safe and reliable access to pipe supplies, household water treatment provides an interim solution for the 1.8 billion without access to safe and reliable drinking water. And as an important primary health intervention, these products can reduce diarrheal disease by up to 45% when effective methods are used correctly and consistently by populations most at risk. And there's even more recent evidence that this may be actually as high as 61% effective. And so when I say effective methods, that would be one that is appropriate for the context, so the water quality issues will be used and can actually be relied upon to work as indicated or as marketed. But selecting a product can be really difficult. There's the issue of market diversity. So many technology types, such as various kinds of filtrations, various kinds of disinfection, combination technologies, and always new and emerging technologies. So that's why there was this need for a health-based performance evaluation to help guide and inform this selection. But many countries don't have a comprehensive health-based regulation, nor the technical capacity to implement WHO recommendations for evaluating household water treatment. So, WHO established an international evaluation scheme for household water treatment to fill the need for rigorous health-based assessment of household water treatment technologies based on the WHO recommendations. The scheme promotes and coordinates independent and consistent evaluation of household water treatment products based on WHO criteria. And beyond the product evaluation, the scheme has the objective to strengthen the technical and regulatory capacity within countries, ultimately working towards establishing these to be in-country evaluations. While chemical contaminants are of concern in different locations and different kinds of chemical contaminants, the scheme is limited to performance against microbial groups of concern in water. These are bacteria, virus, and protozoan cysts. And the reason for limiting to microbiological performance is because microbiological concerns are ubiquitous. With this, the aim is to guide WHO member states and procuring UN agencies in the selection of technologies and support national governments in related functions. So the audience for the scheme evaluations are actually those who are procurers, those allowing products on the market, researchers, and here I've listed national certifiers, regulatory authorities, researchers, manufacturers, and implementers. And the expectation is with time, local governments will manage, which I had mentioned earlier. The scheme is supporting building national capacity, both on the technical side and on this regulatory side. So where is the scheme now? The scheme to date has received 100 expressions of interest, and 51 of those products have been evaluated. And I'm not going to go into detail today about the performance outcome, but I urge you to read the reports on the scheme website to really have a chance to dig into the details. But for a high-level mention, I want to highlight that a variety of technologies were evaluated, which is great because the scheme is very promotive of there being options available for those making selections. You can see the scheme has a tiered approach to assigning performance, which you can see across the bottom of the graph as a 1-star for targeted protection. This performance outcome is assigned when a technology meets 2 of the 3 microbial groups requirements. And then there is a 2-star and a 3-star called comprehensive protection for those products that meet performance criteria for all 3 microbial groups reduction criteria, either to a protective or a highly protective level, 2-star or 3-star respectively. And you can see here that in this kind of summary slide that 8 of the 51 products evaluated failed to meet the minimum performance criteria for any of the tiers. And this here is seen as little or no protection. And sharing a few key takeaways, one of the most interesting was that manufacturer quality control is highly variable. The testing is performed in triplicate, and when the 3 products were tested, there was notable variability among the replicates, sometimes leading to failing to meet the WHO scheme criteria, in fact. And of those 8 products I showed that did not meet any of the scheme criteria, 6 of those 8 products showed manufacturing quality management issues, leading to not meeting a tier or lever or performance criteria. And even among products that pass, but did show inconsistency among replicates, reduction range from meeting minimum requirements to exceeding top tier. So very interesting. If you read the reports, this is expanded upon, and you know, the really good value that the scheme has added here is this feedback was useful for the manufacturers who were able to tighten up their quality control based on these results. Key takeaway too, while you can have some level of expectation about what a technology type may be capable of, there's still a need to evaluate because variation exists. The report gives an example with membrane technologies, the evaluation of different membrane technologies and their variation between different manufactured products. Takeaway 3, chlorine is not a simple evaluation and application. Here I'll just talk about the evaluation. And to have a solid, consistent laboratory evaluation, you need to consider the complexities expected in natural source waters, particularly with organic matter and type, because it really impacts chemical demand. And from the application side, the user has to remember it's just not about the visible turbidity in your source water. Round 2 report really goes into highlighting the impact of natural organic matter on chlorine disinfection effectiveness for different products. Takeaway 4, understand water quality and technical limitations. I mentioned the lab reports again because the laboratory evaluations of the various technologies using both a general test water mimicking a high water quality like groundwater, and a challenge test water mimicking a lower quality water like a surface water, really showed the level of strength and weakness for different technologies under the 2 water scenarios. Simply put, technologies have different capabilities and weaknesses, and the selection should be informed by the user's household water quality. It's our hope that this also conveys the message to manufacturers, the need to consider a wide range of water quality and product development, perhaps through the use of combining treatment over a single technology approach. This may mean like pre-filtration to remove turbidity before the water reaches the UV technology portion in a system. Key takeaway 5. Wow, I don't think any of us expected to have the scheme evaluation bring to light how important clear and concise and complete use instructions are. We saw strong impact to log reduction performance based on the instructions that differed for very similar products. And a few tips. Use instructions in multiple language with pictorial steps are advantageous. Order of operation for multi-stage treatment products must be specific and easy to use. Adapt use instructions that consider influent water quality, like double dose if it's a chemical contaminant and the water is known to be quite, of low quality. And in summary, the scheme has completed 51 product evaluations, and these have been important for informed planning and responding in emergency response, informed national guidelines in Ukraine, removed ineffective products from the Ebola essential interventions list, has been a market differentiator for manufacturers seeking new market. So we're excited to see the list of evaluated products grow as the evaluations are ongoing. The real emphasis moving forward will be on supporting countries with strengthening in-country capacity to do their own evaluation. This is from a laboratory and regulatory perspective. Again, we mentioned important to continue impact will be the ongoing communication efforts about the scheme. So I thank you for the opportunity today to communicate about the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikki, for the presentation you shared, and it already generates a little bit of discussion. And I think one of the questions I wanted to pose to you from Matthias, and I will read it. His comment was on the phrase "when correctly and consistently used," and then his question is that is a massive caveat, and I would be interested to hear what data there is on how much of the water consumes in a day needs to be treated so that a health impact can still be measured. So I don't know whether you would be able to respond to that question or comment.
Yeah, I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, ideally all the water being used for drinking and food preparation would be treated. And that becomes difficult because you can have household water treatment maybe at the schools where the children are going, but they might not have it at home, or it might not be used consistently at home. Correct and consistent use of these systems is an interesting discussion that happened with the scheme. And I really urge you to take a look at, I think it was round 2, and there's also a paper that came out by Dr. Joe Brown that talks about how important correct and consistent again, all the water that they're consuming throughout the day, how important that is. And you actually see that a very, very robust, well-performing product is important. Yes, absolutely. But maybe even something of a little bit lower robustness, but that's used more consistently can have equal or maybe even more value.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that elaborate response. There was another question, but that one we'll keep for the discussion, and the speakers can also respond in the chat. So next on the program is Marcio. Marcio Botto is a senior knowledge and research advisor with COST, working on projects related to household water treatment and safe storage. His background is civil engineering, and he holds a master and PhD degrees in water resources and environmental engineering. His WASH and capacity development experience includes working at the National Health Foundation and Ministry of Health in Brazil as a water and wastewater engineer, and at the University of Fortaleza as an adjunct professor in delivering training in American countries as part of your role at COST, I assume. So he will talk about the household water treatment, or the HWTS network. Let me just bring up his slides. Thank you for being able and willing to present as part of the session, Marcio. And the floor is yours. I hope you can see the slides now.
No, not yet. I only see the, not my slides. It's a tool.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, I have to scroll forward a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hello everyone. It's can you all hear me? I think so. So it's a pleasure to be here presenting on behalf of the HWTS Network Secretariat. Before we begin the presentation, I would like to thank Rainer for the introduction, and also thank Meta Research and Smart Center Group for putting together this session and inviting the Network Secretariat. So thank you so much. My name is Marcio, and I'm a Knowledge and Research Advisor at COST. And I'm here today to represent the Secretariat, but I'm not the only one, of course. We are a team of collaborators from 3 organizations, WHO, COST, and University of North Carolina. Next, please. So for the next 10 minutes, we'll be presenting a little bit of the network history, when it started, its mission, objectives, the importance of the HWTS for achieving the SDGs, the network activities. We're going to present a discussion forum promoted by the network, and also the HWTS knowledge base platform. Next. So when it started, in February of 2003, around 30 organizations from the public, private, academic, and nonprofit sectors came together in Switzerland to establish the International Household Water Treatment and Safe Storage Network. The network was, at that time, it was sponsored by WHO, with the purpose to provide a space to share information, discuss and promote group and individual actions. But what was the rationale behind it? Why the network was created? What was the main reason to do that? Next, please. So the primary, let's say the primary reason is that the HWTS field was sort of fragmented, disorganized, and the stakeholders were not connected. The HWTS field was evolving rapidly, and it was difficult to keep up with the pace. There were several studies indicating that HWTS could improve the water quality and prevent diarrhea disease. New products and options were put on the market, and new data and info were generated. But these were sort of fragmented, and it was not always possible to access this data. So it was clear the need for new regulation and policies as well. So the network was formed to connect the several stakeholders, coordinate the efforts, and organize the sector. Next. And so the network started with the mission to contribute to a significant reduction in waterborne disease, especially among vulnerable populations, by promoting HWTS as a key component of WASH programs. And the objectives were to strengthen the evidence base, evaluate and disseminate best practices, and support the development of national policies and framework. Please. Here, you can see the timeline of the last 20 years of the network. In 2003, there were, as I said already, around 30 organizations, so 25 organizations as members, and the WHO as the main host, the host of the network. In 2011, UNC joined the Secretariat with UNICEF and WHO as co-organizers. The network had around 150 organizations, key organizations as members. In 2020, COST joined the Secretariat, and we had around 390 members. Because of the work on promotion, marketing, and the technical services delivered by the Secretariat, the number of members has dramatically increased, and today we are about 1,100 members in total. So you can see that in the last 3-4 years, we had a exponential increase in the number with the number of members. Next, please. Yeah. So here's one of the key questions, not let's say question, but a slide of this presentation. Besides the network, I want to also present why HWTS must be part of the path to achieving SDG 6.1. The network, we need to remember, that was built on the evidence that household water management could significantly contribute to meeting the Millennium Development Goals. And today we have more evidences that HWTS must be part of the path of the process to achieving the SDG 6.1. There are evidences that piped water system share similar quality and reliability concerns that are often associated with non-networked options. In many countries, we have companies and the public sector is struggling to deliver a good water quality. So regardless the water source, studies have indicated that in low and middle income countries, the microbial water quality often deteriorates between the point of collection and the point of use. You can see in this graph on your left that countries in Asia, Africa, in Latin America, 46% of the population used drinking water free from contamination at the point of collection, while in the point of use, 22% were using drinking water free from contamination. So there is this graph was produced back in 2017 for the UNICEF document, and it was again reported on the state of world drinking water. And you can also see that systematic reviews and meta-analysis have indicated that household water treatment has a comparable health impact to piped water systems. The reduction of diarrhea, for example, was 52% for water supply on premises, piped water supply, and 50% using filtration technologies at point of use. So there are some researchers that indicate the similar health impact. And you can also see some studies indicating that microbial contamination is widespread in low middle income countries, regardless, and affects all water source types, including pipe supply as well. We have problems with poor reliability, pressure loss and intermittency of piped systems, technical barriers, and there are so many problems around, not just with no-network solutions, but also with network solutions as well. Next, please. And I also want to bring the concept that, should we just use one single, there's just one single technology to treat the water. No, we should bear in mind that there is no silver bullet. There is no just, okay, filtration is the only one. This type of technology is the most appropriate. Not exactly. You've seen in Nick's presentation. And several factors should be considered to make sure that the water is safe for drinking. An important approach that should be more emphasized when implemented HWTS project is the multi-barrier approach. This is nothing new. It's a copy of the centralized network supply system. Just like in a centralized water treatment plant, the HWTS can be employed in a multi-barrier approach, combining sedimentation, filtration, and disinfection methods, assuring that the water will be safe from microbiological and some chemical contaminants. One of the key concerns sometimes with HWTS is it's not possible to remove all the chemical contaminants, and depends on the type of technology. So, and also the multi-barrier approach is not just a set of water treatment methods. It also emphasizes the importance that the HWTS should be used alongside with source water protection, safe transportation, and safe storage handling, which is a very important barrier. Next, please. And this is also already discussed. I don't want to comment again. It's just to emphasize that the technology itself will not produce the health outcomes. The correct and consistent use over time has proven to be as important as the technology performance. I think this is the paper that Nikki has just mentioned, selecting household water treatment options on the basis of WHO performance testing protocols. We also have some discussions in a blog and also papers that confirm this as well. I can point out to you later. I don't think we have that much time, so please, next, Rania. And here is just what exactly the HWTS can offer to the members. Today, the network brings together practitioners, academics, and policymakers working on water quality initiatives to interact as a community. So the network members can share their challenges, learn from each other, and stay up to date on research and industry trends. The membership is free. And as a member, you can access the network discussion forum. We call the Knowledge Point. I can provide you later the link to access it. Access the network events and meetings. Receive the newsletter periodically with the news of the sector, events, meeting. You can also, as a member, promote your own events, your work, and your experiences on the network, communication channels, and you can access the regional and global learning exchange, the technical webinars on water quality testing and treatment. Next, please. And here are just some examples of our products and services. As I said, we have regional and global learning exchange. This year, we're gonna have 5 or 6, I'm not sure exactly, learning exchange, global and regional as well. We already have 6 webinars scheduled for this year, technical sessions, and the annual meeting that usually happens in October. We also deliver technical resources on HWTS. We have developed a white paper on HWTS and market. Back in the past, it was a toolkit, a toolkit for monitoring and evaluating HWTS. And today, we are developing the sanitary inspection forms for HWTS. It's available for review and your contribution. We also have an interactive knowledge base featuring project map, product and technology catalog, specific country level content related to policies and research. So a bunch of products and services are available for the members and the HWTS stakeholders. Next, please. Here's the knowledge point, just to mention to you. and you can check the link on the bottom. We invite you to participate in the discussion forum. If you have a question you'd like to ask a broader group of professionals, any technology or methodology you'd like to learn, you can also share your knowledge with other forum members. And we use this space to discuss case studies, common challenges, and share what we know about HWTS. Next. And there's also the knowledge base, the HWTS knowledge base, where you can find a catalog of products and technologies, an extensive listing of projects, guidance on implementation approach, and monitoring and evaluation, as well as regulations, policy, and studies by country. So it's really interesting to see this country focus section where you can choose, you can select the country and take a look at the policies, regulations, and studies related to that specific country. Next, please. And usually in October, as I already mentioned, we have the network annual meeting. So all members from around the world can connect and share the latest development in HWTS. The virtual meeting is inclusive, multidisciplinary, and held in multiple languages, in English, in Spanish, and French. Next. And this is the last one. Thank you so much. And I'm open for questions and for the Q&A session as well. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Marcio, for your nice presentation and the overview of the work of the network. I think there have been some questions in the chat, but for the time's sake, we'll continue with the next presentation by Valérie Mazon, who is the Managing Director of the Known Communities, an impact investment fund focusing on water access and nutrition with a portfolio of 18 businesses, reaching every day more than 11 million people. So quite impressive. And with 30 years of business experience in FMCG and healthcare, she's a strong believer of the business as a force for good. So thank you very much for your willingness to also present as part of this event. And the virtual floor is yours. So you can share the slides from your side.
Yes, thank you. So I hope you see my slide.
Yeah, just you have to make it full screen.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yes,
so
yeah, it's perfect.
Full screen, yeah. So thank you very much for inviting me. So what I'm going to share with you is, first of all, I will explain what we do at Danone Communities, but then I will share with you a study we have done in order to understand among different water access solutions, how to make them financially sustainable. Because as Rainer was saying, I'm a true believer of business as a force for good, but business means that at one point it has to be financially sustainable to have a permanent impact on health of the population. So who are we? Danone Communities, it is indeed an impact investment fund that was created 15 years ago when Franck Ribou, the CEO of Danone, met Professor Yunus, and together they decided that indeed there were a way to do business differently by supporting what we call social business, so business that has been created in order to resolve a social issue in leveraging a business mechanism. So Danone Communities was created 15 years ago, and with two objectives. The first one is to give access to safe drinking water to low-income population, and the second one is to give access to nutritious food to low-income population. And over the last 15 years, we have been investing in 18 social businesses in 25 countries. It's more than 11.5 million people that every day either have access to safe drinking water or nutritious food. And for the water itself, it's 2.8 billion liters of affordable water, which is sold every year to vulnerable population. So this is a map with all the businesses in which we have invested. and you have the logo of the one of water. The water portfolio is the largest portfolio within Danone community. So we are working with safe water enterprise such as 1001 Fontaine, which is a social business operating in Cambodia and in Vietnam with 2 different business models, and I'll show you afterwards. Drinkwell in Bangladesh, a very interesting business model, public private partnership with utilities in Bangladesh, and it really struck me when Chief Ernest gave the example of Ethiopia. I mean, this is not exactly the same, but it's quite similar what they are doing in Bangladesh. Impact Water in Nigeria, which is giving access in schools. So we have Nazava, which is a home filter company in Indonesia, and Lisa will talk just after me. But it was very interesting for us to invest in Nazava because it was the first home filter company in which we have invested, and therefore we have learned a lot also on different ways to bring safe drinking water to low-income population. So what we did, I mean, based on 15 years of experience on this water sector, so the safe water enterprise, so those businesses, the small businesses targeting low-income population, it's market-based and self-driven approach. So leveraging those 15 years of experience, the large portfolio of businesses we have investing in, we decided to try to understand how can we make them reach financial sustainability. Why? Because it's important to sustain the impact of those businesses. So this is what we have done. We have looked at the different type of businesses, safe water enterprising throughout the world that we know. So maybe there are others, but this is the one we have looked at. So you have on one part 4 types of businesses which are providing water off premise. That means that the consumer is coming with his jar, jug, to a place to fill his jug of water. So this is the 4 business: bulk rural, bulk urban, tank, bulk retail, and fountains in retail. And you have others that are on-premise. And on-premise, it means that indeed the safe drinking water is brought to the house of the consumer. And here you have the HOD centralized or decentralized, the household filter, and the mini-grid. So what is interesting to look at is on the off-premise, so the consumer is coming with his jar and his jug. For the bulk rural, you would have understand that those are in a rural area. The bulk urban are in peri-urban or urban area. The tank bulk, maybe you don't know about it, but it's a water which is produced in one factory and then transport through tank in retail, where they fill a small tank on the top of the mom and pop store, and the consumer is coming in a mom and pop store to fill his water. And the fountains retail is a very new model that we have seen in South Africa, where you have a dispenser in the shop, really connect to the pipeline, filtrate the water in order to make sure it's drinkable, and the consumer is coming and fill the jug. On premise, you have 2 models. One is a small factory which is producing water and deliver either at home or at retail. That's the centralized HOD. And decentralized HOD is, for example, Jibu in Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, which are small water kiosks, which are decentralized production. They filtrate the water and they deliver at home to each of the consumer. And the household filter, so it's a decentralized production and sold through microfinance institution, for example, the equipment directly to the consumer. So these are the businesses we have looked at. And the other thing we have taken into account is the affordability. Because what is key indeed is to ensure that this water is affordable for the targeting population. And there is a clear definition from the UN in terms of affordability. It has to price within the 3% of disposable revenue. So therefore, there is a maximum of the price that can be set for each of the targeting population. And we have looked at the different model, and indeed, depending on the model, you have a price that can target either C2, D, or E consumer, depending on the price, remaining within the 3% of household revenues. So looking at all of that, we have come out with this picture. So first of all, looking at all the safe water enterprise model, it's key to understand what kind of water treatment they bring. Indeed, John Cherry told us at the beginning, the water is contaminated. It can be bacterial, but also chemical. So most of the safe water model we have looked at, they indeed treat both bacterial and chemical. Only household filter today are only treating bacterial. In terms of consumer, you see that different model target different type of consumer, and therefore it will have a strong impact in terms of how to reach financial sustainability. So if we look at the first one, the bulk in rural, they very often target D and E consumer, so very low income consumer. Therefore, in order to be financially sustainable, they need to have CapEx and OpEx subsidized because it's pretty high. And they can do that either through grants or through credit carbon. And indeed, Chief Ernest told us at the beginning that the first credit carbon was on water, and lots of businesses now on water manage to have credit carbon, which is a good fundings in order to subsidize CapEx and OpEx. Or the other way is to have a hybrid model. It means that not only they will sell to low-income population, but they can also have another part of the business with higher type of consumer, and therefore it can cross-subsidize the model targeting rural population. For urban population, usually they target C2 and D consumer. It's very highly densified, so therefore the volume is high, and it's easier, for them to amortize their capex. They need sometimes to have capex subsidized. They can do it through credit carbon again or hybrid model. And if they target only C2, then they can be self-sustainable. For tank in retail, they can be sustainable because they don't target D. In fact, when you look at this analysis, if you target D, this is where you need indeed to find subsidization in order to compensate for the loss of the price that you sell the product to D. But what is interesting here is to look at the household filter, because the household filter, they can target whatever the type of consumer, very high end or very low end, and they are self-sustainable. And for us, it was quite eye-opening to see that this was a model that indeed could be self-sustainable much easier, if I can say, than the other business. Even so, of course, this solution is not applying for all the countries, because there are countries where you have chemical pollution, and therefore household filter, for the moment, at least, cannot be used in these countries. But in countries where there is only bacteria, pathogen contamination, household filter is a very good solution. Of course, in this model, you need to be very careful in terms of maintenance of the household filter. And also there is a whole issue, or at least a challenge, in terms of sales and the upfront payment from the consumer, because it's pretty expensive, the household filter, on the upfront payment, not on the long run, but for the consumer, you know, he has to take this money out of his pocket. So this is why very often they partner with microfinance institutions. So as a conclusion, I would like to say that, in fact, all solutions are good. It depends very much on the specific condition in a country, of the type of water, of the type of business, and we need all of those solutions in order to fill the gap of the 2 billion people lacking access to safe drinking water. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Valerie, for your very interesting presentation. And I think also it's nice that how you compare household water treatment systems with other modalities to provide people with safe water. The next presentation is from Lieselot from Nazava. She's the co-founder and director of Nazava Water Filters and a development expert in microfinance and women empowerment. Whilst living in Indonesia in 2007, she experienced the difficulty in obtaining safe drinking water and realized the enormous need for affordable purification solutions. And Nazava's mission is to empower women to purify the water to make their families healthier. And to date, they have impacted over 600,000 people with access to safe water and affordable drinking water. And also, Lieselot, thank you for being available, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Reinier Veldman and Henk Holtzlag from Meta and the Smart Center Group for organizing this session and having me here. Welcome, everybody. This is data that comes from Indonesia. Indonesia, where I live, has 260 million people. And as you can see, the World Bank published this report in 2021, which shows that only 9% of the population use utility water. And even as Marcio has showed us in the previous presentation, even that piped water is not safe to drink. So basically, everybody in Indonesia has a primary source of water in their house that's contaminated with E. coli bacteria. As a result of this lack of access to piped solutions, many households depend on water that comes through these kind of solutions. You can also call this a piped solution, although maybe Nikki can explain whether this falls then under safely managed or not. I personally would not feel very safe if I would have to drink water that comes from these kind of piped solutions. But basically, I think these fell more in the self-help solutions. As you can see, that they are, very simply put together, and there's no central treatment, and it's very decentralized. But we can assume and agree that this water is contaminated, and this is the primary source or the primary methodology how people in urban Indonesia get their water. So I found Nazava together with my husband in 2009 in Indonesia, and since last year we've also been selling in Kenya, and in 2018 we also ventured into Ethiopia. Now let's bring you to Kenya, where the situation is even much worse compared to Indonesia. And here you can meet Gladys, and this is her water source, and this is the water that she gives to her children, and she does not boil this water. As a result of a lack of safe drinking water in Kenya alone, 333,000 people die of diarrhea. This equals 1.4 crashed Boeing 747s every week. And there are almost nearly 2 million children stunted in Kenya alone because they're continuously exposed to diarrhea. If we look at the global number of diarrhea, and I assume you're all aware, it's around 1.2 million premature deaths every year, which equals 6 crashed Boeing 747s every day. And this silent death has to stop. Also, what has to stop is the burden that mothers are carrying to provide safe drinking water to their families. So that's why we have developed this solution. It's a household water treatment system. It can purify 16 liters of water, or it has a container of 16 liters of water, and it has 16 liters of safely treated water. We have a ceramic filter that uses a 3-stage filtration process consisting of ceramic, silver, and activated carbon. And we are tested by the WHO and we have we are categorized as providing a 1-star targeted protection. Our filter costs $30 in Indonesia, $50 in Kenya, and can provide 1,000 liters of water for only $7. There are not many other solutions on the market that can provide water, safe drinking water, with these costs. Besides, we provide a 1-year warranty, and the product that we sell has been designed through a human-centered design process, taking the mothers, such as Gladys, into account. As we also generate carbon credits, because mothers like Gladys and many people in Indonesia, they boil their water. And by using a water filter, households replace the need for boiling their water on wood or charcoal or LPG. In order to be then accredited for carbon credits, you have to go through a very thorough accreditation process, which we have done under the gold standard for the global goals. And within that scheme, we have not only been certified for our reduction in carbon emissions, but we've also been certified for directly contributing to the SDGs that you see here. So of course it's SDG 6, but then our consumers in Indonesia get an average of $80 per year in additional income. We empower mothers as they can save a lot of time, as they need less time for boiling their water or seeking fuel wood. We improve to good health and well-being. SDG 13, climate action, and SDG 15, life on land. So to date, we have sold over 200,000 products in more than 32 different countries, and we impacted over more than 600,000 people that now are daily using Nazafa water to stay hydrated. And as I said before, we've been tested by the WHO. And for our Indonesian operations, we generated nearly $500,000 in carbon credits. We've also supplied to UNICEF for the water filters used in the Ukraine. And at this moment, we are also assembling filters in the Ukraine with internally displaced people. Last but not least, because of all these thorough accreditation processes that we go through for our carbon credits, it has also shown that we have a 93% continued use rate year on year, which really shows A, that our clients and our customers are very happy with our product, and B, that using a household water filter can be an effective solution to reduce the exposure to bacteria and improve the health of our consumers. And this is our consumer profile. So we target rural women that are a member of a microfinance institute that use ground or river water. They boil on wood and their monthly income is less than $100. And there's like 2 billion people, as we heard before, that depend on groundwater. And basically that is the people that we also target with our filter. The only challenge is, as Valerie already pointed out, is that our product costs around $50 in Kenya. And many of those rural women, they cannot afford like a half-month salary to purchase a water filter. So in order to increase our impact and reach more households, we have developed 2 different types of partnerships. One is with the gold standards to generate carbon credits, and one filter can approximately reduce 1 ton of carbon emissions per year. And this carbon revenue that comes in can then reduce the upfront cost of our product and basically can be used as a subsidy. Then the other partnerships that we have developed is through microfinance institutes. So the way it works is that our Safe Water expert, which basically is a commissioned sales agent, shadows the loan officer of the microfinance institutes. And these loan officers, they work with women groups using the Grameen model. And when the loan officer visits the group, he handles the loan, sees if there's still outstanding debt. And then afterwards, our sales agent can introduce the product. Then anybody in that group that wants to have the product, they raise their hand, they sign off a loan form, and within 48 hours, we are then able to provide the product to the end user. The MFI pays Nazafa on a monthly basis, and the end user pays the microfinance institutes on a weekly or a monthly basis, depending on how they are structured. So these partnerships with microfinance institutes helps us to de-risk the payment of installments of our product. But we cannot do it alone. As we heard before, there are 2.2 billion people that don't have access to safe drinking water. But drinking water is a public good. It's the same as electricity. In the Netherlands, where I'm from, we also used to have gas provided into our house through a utility. Even our sewage is also organized through a utility. But in the global south, many of these centralized solutions struggle. That's why the solar lamps have organized themselves in the GOGLA. That is an industry alliance for the solar lamps. The cooking companies have organized themselves under the Clean Cooking Alliance to further promote the dissemination and the sales and the demand generation of the cook stoves. There's also the Container-Based Sanitation Alliance, which also have organized themselves to promote the use of decentralized solutions with regard to sanitation. And as there's 2.2 billion people that lack access to safe drinking water, it's time to develop an industry alliance. And we've been talking to the organizations that you see here in this slide. And also, I'm very happy to welcome Dries from Basic Water Needs. He was also attending the session. We have Sortea from Hydrologic. She's also here in the call. And Agua Clara and Rachet from Folia Water are also here in the call. And together, we want to form an industry alliance so that we can share best practices on how we can impact all the other mothers, such as Gladys, with safe drinking water in her house. We need to share knowledge on how do we incentivize our agents? How do we generate demand? How can we collaborate best with the government in order to create better tax incentives and these kind of activities? So this is still very early stage, but in order to reach those 2.2 billion people, the private sector has to play a role, and market-based solutions should be further promoted. So the objectives of the alliance, which we have in mind, and sorry, they haven't been crafted in stone yet because this is still very early stage, but the possible objectives are that we want to serve the lower income rural households using a market-based approach, that we exchange best practices, as I just explained, and that we promote the sector to attract more funding to reach those 2 billion people that depend on groundwater. What I've seen so far is many donors that want to reach SDG 6 invest a lot in pipe solutions. And indeed, I wish that for everybody, and that should be the end goal. But in the meantime, let's help Gladys purify her water so that she does not need to give this contaminated water to her children anymore. Thank you very much. And let's join forces to reach the people that live beyond the pipe through a market-based approach. And your questions and your suggestions are very much welcome. And thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Lise, a lot for your very interesting and presentation and the call to group and to work together. I think there have been a few questions also for which are Indonesia specific. So if you could look at them in the chat or the Q&A, and then we'll continue for now with Henk Holtzlag, the last presentation before the discussion. Henk has 3 decades of experience in rural water supply projects, mostly with failures, but also with some successes. He co-initiated the SMART concept and is senior advisor of the Meta and the Smart Center Group. And there are smart centers in 9 countries and 1 in Nicaragua. 9 countries in Africa and 1 in Nicaragua. These centers train entrepreneurs in the local production of innovative low-cost wash technologies. So I will start the presentation for you, Henk, and then the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, René. So I'll present on the idea. It's a bold idea on 2 with 8. That, as John Cherry mentioned, came up in Stockholm based on the call for bold action and action now made by Henk Ovink, who is the water envoy for the Dutch government. So on slide 2, you see the reasons of the contamination, which have been mentioned by the others already. So I don't need to repeat it. What is interesting is that even from water companies and utilities, water is not always safe at the point of collection. So I think this is a big elephant in the room. It is time that we acknowledge that even water utilities do not always deliver safe water. So one more reason to focus on treatment at the point of use. So slide 3 is what are solutions? And of course, everybody wants new boreholes with good hygienic seals, with water kiosk, etc. But as Lieselot explained, we need intermediate solutions because new boreholes, especially in rural areas, cost at least $25 per person and probably much more. So to get safe water to these small communities will at least cost 50 billion and probably much more. And this intermediate solution can be the water kiosk and the household water treatment. And it works, as you heard again from Lieselot. If you use the treatment option in a correct and consistent and continuous way, you can reduce waterborne diseases. Already in 2007, the WHO published a study that says that also you have economic benefit. So for every $6 or so, for every dollar invested, there is benefits up to $6. So even from the economic point of view, it would be smart to start treating water at the point of use. Slide 4. So in the past 20 years, we have seen many projects. Solar disinfection was promoted a lot. Chlorine dispensers, local production started of pot filters and biosand filters. And the local production of filters with high-tech filter elements like Nazafa and tulip filter started. Filter with membrane filter elements include the livestock family, Sawyer and others. But we have a lot of lessons learned. In the project in Kenya, for instance, 900,000 filters were given for free. And it became a failure because for several reasons. One of them was that the maintenance was complicated. But we can learn from these failures. What we did see is that filters in general seem a promising market-based product. And if you Google on the internet and you Google filters, you see an enormous amount of filters. The filters are a multi-million business, which means it's a market-based product. So for family level reverse osmosis, for instance, become very popular, and that is only possible where people have a pipe system. But the gravity filters are also becoming increasingly popular. For instance, the Pureit filters in Asia, millions have been sold. Stephanie in Brazil sold over 20 million filters. And you just heard about the tulip and the Nazafa filters also becoming very popular. So the question is, why is it so profitable to sell to the rich and so hard to get safe water to the poor? And one reason may be that the marketing did not take into account the P of people. As mentioned by the others, treatment products are working well if they are complying with the 3 C's, the correct, the consistent, and the continuous use. And you probably know the other piece of marketing, and the first P stands for product. So each product should be effective, attractive, and user-friendly. It should become a must-have, as mentioned by Urs Hailey. For instance, in India, people put their water filter, their Pureit filter, in front of the house because they are proud of it. And the second P stands for price. There should be a range of options that include options that are affordable also for the low-income people. And people should be able to choose the product that they like and that they can afford. The third P stands for the place. The product should be available nearby. And that is important for all the users of the products. In many countries, chlorine is sold in pharmacies in every village. So maybe these pharmacies should include 1 or 2 filter models also, or other options if they are attractive. And the fourth P stands for promotion. The companies will do the marketing of the product, but the government should do the social marketing, the creation of the awareness. And if you want to learn more about these 5 Ps, I recommend to read the book Marketing Safe Water Systems. It's free, downloadable, and I think it's a kind of a Bible for safe water. So the question remains, how do we reach these 2 billion people? And of course, there's many, as Valerie also mentioned, there is no silver bullet. But we see 3 main activities. And the first one is awareness. So a large scale and long-term awareness campaigns are needed on radio, on television, on schools and churches, on the importance of treatment of the point of use. For instance, many people do not think that water can be dangerous if it is clear. So you need to explain that clear water still can be contaminated. And an example of a good awareness campaign was held in Cambodia. And the awareness creation, this type of awareness creation is the role of governments and NGOs. The second action is building supply chains, commercial supply chains, and creating payment options. As Lieselot mentioned also, we need all kinds of payment options so people who want to filter can pay in small parts. And the third action is supporting the poorest. Again, as mentioned before, the poor people, if you earn $50 or $100 a month, you will not spend that on a water filter. So the poorest of these 2 billion, they need support. And those who know marketing know that subsidies can distort markets. But that is not necessarily if the subsidies are targeted. Even in a rich country in Holland, we subsidize poor families. So in water filters or other products, one option could be not to give products, but to give vouchers. For instance, with a voucher of $20, a family can go to a local shop. They pay $2 and they get a filter of $22. If they want a filter of $32, they pay $12. And there is experience with vouchers with bed nets, and that was not perfect, but again, we can learn from that. And vouchers can help to strengthen the existing or build new commercial supply chains, which are essential for spare parts for all the users. So this 8 billion that is needed how should that be used? So again, this is a rough indication, but we think more or less 30% of this amount is needed to create the awareness. 10% for supply chains and payment system, and 60% for the supporting the poorest. And who should pay this? Well, there's no one person or one company or one organization that will, but it can be funded, and it should be funded, we think, by governments, by NGOs, by everyone who is interested in reaching the goal of safe water for all. And as Lieselot again mentioned, carbon credits can become a very interesting income generation activity to reduce the cost of the filters. And as mentioned by Chef Ernest, we see that Ethiopia, and maybe the other example as mentioned by Valerie, but there are breakthroughs that show that we can do it. And in Ethiopia, there were 4 reasons why it is very interesting. One is that treatment is now promoted by the government. It's part of a program for self-supply, where families are supported if they invest in their own well. The second reason why why Ethiopia is interesting is because there is utilities that sell water filters, because an increasing number of utilities admit they cannot always deliver safe water, so they start selling filters as an additional service. The third reason is there is local production now of 2 to 3 different filters, so people can choose the type of filter. And the fourth reason is that there is the carbon credit program that was started with this organization Agro for All, which can be used to reduce the cost of the filters. And then my last slide is some recommendations. We think that the model from Ethiopia can be adjusted to the country, to other countries, and it can be scaled up. The second recommendation was also mentioned by Lieselot, which make treatment options market-based. Offer a range of options to people, but let people choose. The third recommendation is stop giving products. If you want to help the poor, start with vouchers or other options, but don't distort the market. And maybe a fourth recommendation is for each country to form a safe water task group to advise governments and NGOs what are the most cost-effective ways to get to reach the goal of safe water. And the fifth recommendation is already mentioned by Lieselot, is form an alliance of producers. And an example can be the Cooking Stove Alliance. So what is next? Marcia also asked you to become a member of the network, the treatment network. If you're interested in pilot with vouchers, maybe we can help each other, we can share ideas. But the logic is, last slide, let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henk, for your presentation, and yeah, for the I think the expiring example also which you have shown. Time is going quite fast, but I think it's good to have about 15 minutes for discussion and for questions which can be asked to the speakers. And Catherine Francis of COST will moderate that part. So thank you very much for being available.
Thank you, Rainier, and thank you to all the panelists for your presentations today. We found them really, really interesting. I'm just going to go back to a few technical questions about HWTS technologies. And now would be the time for my audio to have some technical issues. Just bear with me for one moment. This question is actually for Nikki on HWTS technologies. There were a couple of questions in the Q&A in the chat that I'm going to group thematically. It looks as though chlorine products in general did not fare particularly well in some evaluation rounds. So is the World Health Organization considering a general recommendation for using alternative technologies, for example, ceramic pot filters, solar disinfection, biosand filters? For example, the BSF, does it meet WHO criteria? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, and I think actually, chlorine is recognized as an effective product. People are comfortable with it. It's usually available. It's cost effective. So it is a solution that has a lot of merit, actually. I think what was interesting when we looked at chemical disinfectants, including some chlorine products, with the scheme is the importance of use instructions, right? So working with manufacturers and saying, okay, we noticed this about the use instructions that may lead to lower performance. Maybe it didn't say mix, something like this. But chlorine is actually, this was a big part of why originally the targeted protection category was considered very important, is because we do know that chlorine is effective and well taken up. So I hope that answers the question. I mean, and if I could add something, I think WHO is always very supportive of the idea of using combination technologies, because what I mentioned during my talk was that they all have kind of an Achilles heel. So when you use maybe chlorine in combination with a filter together, you can have some really robust treatment. For example, chlorine won't take care of the crypto, but a filter may. So a combination is great too, and chlorine's a good candidate for doing that.
Thank you so much, Nikki. And just another question that had come in specific to technologies. Do you have any further specific recommendations or tips to make sure that household water treatment devices are used consistently? How can you help do monitoring more efficiently and so on?
That's a great question. And as we're really spending, when we were spending a lot of effort in the laboratory evaluations, which there still are laboratory evaluations, but as I mentioned, it's moving a lot more to capacity development work in country. There were a lot of questions raised about in actual use and this kind of thing. So I think one of the things that we're doing, I also mentioned, is communication. I think communication is really key to show that there are products that may work, and some may work better than others, and some may work best in your context where others maybe aren't appropriate. And so we're going to be putting a lot of energy and effort into making sure we have good and clear communication so that the scheme does have uptake, so that procurement folks, regulators, researchers, all of those, the market has in it, options that will work. So that's going to be probably where the biggest emphasis is there.
I'm sorry, can I speak up about this as well?
Yep.
Yes, Marcio, please.
Do we have time? Okay, great, thank you. It's just, I think we have a hook between the two questions. And especially because you mentioned the BSF, the biosand filter, and the ceramic technologies. These technologies are locally made, so they're not that easy to fit under the WHO scheme. For example, the BSF has a ripening time of 30 days to get up to the full effectiveness, and the WHO protocols are different. And when it comes to monitoring the effectiveness of those technologies, we could also not just think on the lab aspect, but also look at the field and also the surveillance. When I'm talking about surveillance, is that we we should not just have water quality testing, but also looking at the risk-based, applying sanitary inspection forms, if we can see if the technologies are working, are being used correctly, consistently. We have forms that you can assess this with the households. So there are some tools that can help us to monitor the technologies and products and see if they're being used correctly and consistently. So it's not just about lab testing, but also including, which is a part of the process. I see like as three processes: lab testing, field testing, quality control, and surveillance. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for adding that, Marcio. Definitely. I think that what the scheme results and the scheme efforts are things to be integrated into other programs. So working with folks like COST is great. Working with maternal health team at WHO, like all of these things, it's a piece that can be integrated into water management plans and all of these other programs. And so, you know, when I focused on communication, it's just like reaching out, making sure that we're doing a good job for that integration, because the scheme only has so much bandwidth, right? And so that's why integration is fantastic. So thank you, Marcio.
True. Thank you. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki and Marcio. I'm just going to jump to another question, and kind of speaking of integration, this one stuck out for me. It's a question for Lieselot. To what extent can you upgrade your filter system to larger volumes? How can you scale it up? For example, can you install your filter system into a piped water construction?
Yes, that's possible. Well, it will not be the product that you see here in the background, but then it will be something that we attach to a pipe. We have that product available as well. It's available through all the e-commerce sites such as Tokopedia, Lazada, and Shopee. And the other option is if the electricity is not functioning well, we can also equip our standard product with, for instance, 1 or 2, 3, or up to 5 filtration elements. So then there's a filtration capacity of 35,000 liters instead of 7,000.
Thank you so much. Just want to reiterate that we are recording this session. I just saw a question pop up in the chat that somebody was having some difficulty with audio. So we are recording and we will be sharing. I'm just going to jump to another question, make sure that all of the panelists have a chance to speak to their experience. John Sherry, in your career, what shift have you seen in how the quality of groundwater is taken into account with regards to drinking water? Okay, maybe we can skip that question. I'm going to move on to another one. Marcio, I'd like to hear from you. How specifically do you think that the HWTS network can contribute to the 2 with 8 initiative? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I found the unmute button. Sorry for that. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. We act as a community of practice for those interested to share their overall experiences. So I think that the network can contribute by strengthening and keeping this community of practice on HWTS, and by connecting stakeholders to tackle the existing challenge to scale up HWTS. And I believe also that the network can support by sharing evidence-based data within the sector, and by increasing overall awareness of different products and technologies. So we can increase this awareness of different products and technologies and use the network to expand this knowledge. And also the network has a space where practitioners, researchers, and policymakers can interact to share experiences, lessons learned, and challenges with HWTS.
Could I answer my question now? Sorry, I couldn't find my button.
Yes, John, sorry about that.
So,
please go ahead.
my fault. So what I've seen is that there's such siloing between the various components in the water sector. So most of the people who are out there making wells are in fact making wells that need water treatment. Because if you don't get a good seal and you don't drill the well properly, you don't put it in the right place, the chances are that the well is going to have bacterial contamination. So water filters should go along with the whole well drilling thing. Now, people don't want to admit this, like, you know, in North America, the fact that 30% of the homeowners have wells that show bacterial contamination, nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to touch it. So I think we have to get reality onto the table so that everybody playing in the game is part of an integrated system.
Thank you, John. I think we have time for one more question before we finish this off. So I would just like to address this to Henk and Lisa and really all of the panelists. What do you think are the best next steps for this initiative? And do you have any ideas for an alliance or next steps that you're really excited about?
Yeah, well, the next steps I mentioned in the last slide, I think, is action on these three topics: the awareness, building the supply chains and payment systems, and support for the poorest, voucher systems, or other ways that maybe there's other better ways to target the poor. For me, what is clear is that we have to admit that we have to support the poor. I think it's an international shame that we still have not. We cannot fund even, you know, $20 for the poorest. So that is, I think that we need to convince government, first of all, of the efficiency. So this presentation could help and show them how efficient household water treatment can be. And then talk to donors and funders and to invest in this. Because also it's not only a cost, it's a benefit. If you have more healthy people, it's a benefit. That's another thing that has to become clear. And then the third action is from the producer side is form this alliance. So we really hope that out of this group, there will be people that are interested, there will be ideas, because we cannot do this ourselves. We need to do it together. And we hope to find a cheerleader for this alliance. We need to have someone that is the cheerleader that can coordinate this thing.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Henk says. We should think of women like Gladys that depend on that water that is beyond the pipe. Yeah, if Gladys, when she saw my product, she signed up for a loan immediately. She said, oh, this looks smart. She gets it that her children are getting ill of diarrhea. She understands the cause of contaminated water and disease. She's aware of the cost that she's making to boil the water if she would have that money. Yeah, but more mothers like Gladys need to have access to these products so they can move on with their life, and they don't have to carry the burden of seeing their children suffer of diarrhea. They don't have to spend so much money going to the medical clinic. They don't have to spend all their time looking for fuel to boil their water. So companies that are active in the South, they need to be stimulated, and the barriers for market-based solutions to reach those rural households have to be eradicated, either through the government or through NGOs that claim to contribute to SDG 6. But then they also need to acknowledge that there are already products available on the market. And it's just a matter of fact of promoting the products that are already being sold. Yeah, create demand. Help us and create demand. Yeah, so that not only mothers in Kenya, but also in Malawi and in so many other countries have access to those products that actually are maybe already available in the capitals, but now let's get those products to the rural people as well.
Yeah, and making those meaningful connections. Nikki, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, if I can just add a little bit more to that, agreeing with Henk and Lisa. I'm excited about the industry alliance. I think what's really important is making sure that when there's convening of conversation that includes all stakeholders, though, so manufacturers, user groups, and regulators, because if you can, if you can find a way to get regulators on board and on how important this is, and making sure that products on the market are performing. I know there's the consistent and correct usage and all that, but like making sure that the products are performing, but getting all those stakeholders together to have a conversation so they all feel very invested in the path forward and okay, and have a voice in it.
So regulators, producers, and what was the third one? Sorry, I'm making notes.
Oh, and users. So
the end user, of course. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that's important. But in Indonesia, for instance, there's no regulation on household water filters. So where to start? This impacts 260 million people, 7th biggest country in the world.
Right.
I cannot do it alone.
Right. Well, I'd love to talk to you more because, WTO is doing some work in some countries with them trying to strengthen the regulation. So Marcio is nodding, so he'd be glad to be part of those conversations too. So yeah, let's connect.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That would be
Lisa,
lovely.
this is not a gap only in Indonesia. It's worldwide. So it's not just in Indonesia that there is no HWTS regulations. So we need to work together and strengthen our effort on how we can advance on this. But yeah, we should all be on
Let's
this
do
together.
that. Yeah.
The coordination is going to be very key to ensuring the success of this initiative. Wonderful. Well, in the last moments of this session, unless any of the other panelists have any other thoughts they want to share before I pass it back to Rainier. Okay, thank you again. Rainier, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Catherine, for moderating the interactive chat and the question and answer, because I think quite a lot came up, and thanks to the panelists for also contributing in the presentation and also in the chat. And I think there's quite some leads to follow up on different topics. Yeah, for those who are joining as participants, thank you also for your contributions. And yeah, the recording will be made available. Tomorrow I will share an email with a link to the recording and also to the individual presentations. And I think in all presentations, there's also a call to join and team up and work together towards the common goal. And I think, yeah, we're very glad that everything fell in the right place with this session, and that it was made possible under the flag also of the UN Water Conference starting tomorrow. So thanks a lot for your interest, and yeah, wishing you all the best.
Thank you,
And
Rainier.
thank you, Rainier,
Thank you, Henk, for hosting us.
coordinating.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rainier.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hank. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.